She walked in barefoot. Everyone laughed. The millionaire said, "If you can dance this waltz, I'll adopt you." But when she began to dance, the entire hall went silent. And what happened next, no one was ready for it. "Dance? You think you can dance this waltz?" The cold, sharp voice of Mr. Raymond Carter, a famous millionaire and owner of one of New York's top dance academies, echoed through the grand hall like thunder. Every whisper faded. Every breath in the audience seemed to stop. The chandeliers above shimmered, their light reflecting off the polished marble floor, making the moment even heavier. In front of him stood Amara, a 12-year-old black orphan girl, barefoot, her small toes pressing nervously against the shiny tiles. Her faded blue dress hung loosely over her thin frame, patched in places where life had torn it. She looked fragile, out of place among the glittering crowd of elite dancers wearing satin shoes and sequin gowns. Yet there was something in her eyes, a quiet fire that refused to be extinguished. Amara had spent the entire morning walking from the orphanage to the academy. Her feet were sore, her stomach empty, but her spirit unbroken. She had seen the poster on a cracked wall weeks ago. Open audition for the Carter Academy's annual waltz performance. Winner receives full sponsorship. For Amara, that single line meant hope. It meant a chance to escape the gray walls of the orphanage and find a place where dreams could breathe. But when she entered the Golden Hall, every pair of eyes had turned toward her. Whispered laughter followed, muffled giggles from well-dressed dancers and their parents who couldn't believe a barefoot orphan had dared to step onto the same stage as them. Yet Amara didn't let their laughter break her focus. She was here for one reason, to dance the way her mother once taught her. I can try, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady enough to reach him. Raymond's lips curved into a smirk that carried both amusement and arrogance. He was a man known for perfection, for sculpting dancers into stars, but also for his cold heart. "This isn't a place for little street dancers," he said, his tones slicing through the air. "My students trained for years to perform the Royal Waltz. You think you could just walk in and dance it?" The judges beside him exchanged uneasy glances. Some felt pity. Others found the situation entertaining. The audience watched in fascination, expecting the little girl to run away in shame. But instead, Amara lifted her chin slightly. Raymond leaned back in his chair, his voice dripping with mockery. "Tell you what," he said, pausing just long enough for everyone to hang on his words. "If you can dance it perfectly, I'll adopt you myself." The crowd gasped. A few laughed softly, thinking it was just another one of Raymond's cruel jokes. To them, this was entertainment, a game between a powerful man and a hopeless child. But to Amara, those words weren't just an insult. They were a promise, a door slightly cracked open toward the life she had always dreamed of. Her lips parted, and in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Then I'll dance." A ripple of surprise swept through the hall. The other dancers looked at one another in disbelief. The pianist at the corner hesitated, unsure if he should begin. Raymond raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected her to accept his challenge so calmly. Something about her confidence unsettled him. As the tension thickened, a breeze slipped through the open window, making the golden curtains flutter. It carried with it a faint memory for Amara, the sound of a soft melody her mother used to hum every night. Her heart tightened, but she held her ground. She took a slow step toward the center of the stage. Her bare feet made no sound against the marble floor, but every movement seemed to echo louder than words. The chandeliers sparkled above her, as if lighting a path only she could see. For a brief second, the hall didn't belong to the rich or the powerful. It belonged to her. Raymond gestured impatiently to the pianist. "Fine," he said with a scoff. "Let's see what the street girl can do." The soft notes of the waltz filled the room, wrapping around Amara like an invisible hand. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, remembering her mother's laughter, the warmth of their small kitchen, the way their feet used to move together across the floor. And then she raised her head. The room blurred. The whispers faded. All that existed now was the rhythm of the music and the beating of her heart. The audience leaned forward, curiosity replacing mockery. Raymond's confident smirk softened slightly, though he didn't understand why. There was something magnetic about her stillness, something that pulled everyone's attention before she even took her first step. Amara inhaled deeply, letting the first note carry her. Every pain, every rejection, every lonely night in the orphanage, it all melted into that moment. She knew this wasn't just a dance. It was her voice, her chance to tell the world that she was more than a forgotten child. And as the melody rose, Amara lifted, her arms with grace, ready to begin the dance that would silence the room and change her life forever. Before the music began, Raymond noticed something unusual in Amara's eyes, a quiet fire, something he hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. It wasn't arrogance or rebellion. It was something deeper, pure determination. But he ignored it, dismissing it as childish confidence that would vanish the moment the first note played. He sat back, arms crossed, his sharp eyes scanning her from head to toe. The room buzzed with whispers, soft laughter, and the faint rustling of silk dresses. Everyone was waiting to see this barefoot orphan embarrass herself. Yet Amara stood still, her hands clasped before her, her small frame steady. Her mind drifted, not to the faces staring at her, but to the past, the quiet nights in the orphanage, the creaking floorboards, the moonlight seeping through the broken window. That was where she had learned to dance, not from teachers, but from memories. She had grown up in a crumbling orphanage on the outskirts of the city. The walls were cracked, and the winters were cruel. Food was scarce, and affection even scarcer. But every time the world seemed too heavy, Amara would remember her mother. Her mother's laughter, her soft voice, and the way she would hum that same waltz while spinning her around their tiny kitchen floor. Her mother used to say, "Music, my darling, is what turns pain into beauty. Whenever life hurts you, dance." But when her mother fell ill, their little dances grew slower until, one night, they stopped forever. Amara had been only 5. That was the night she promised herself she would never forget the melody, the waltz that carried her mother's love. Years later, every night before bed, Amara would hum that same tune softly so no one would hear. She would close her eyes and imagine herself dancing in a bright, golden hall, just like the one her mother had described when telling bedtime stories. In her dreams, she always wore a sparkling dress, twirling freely as her mother watched from afar, smiling. So when she saw the newspaper lying outside the orphanage gate, a wrinkled, rain-stained copy with a small advertisement, her heart skipped a beat. Open audition at Carter Academy. Winner receives a future in dance. To anyone else, it was just an ad. But to Amara, it was destiny knocking. She believed it was fate guiding her to that moment. Not to chase fame or applause, but to find something she had lost long ago, a sense of belonging, a chance to be loved again. Now, standing in front of the millionaire himself, surrounded by flawless dancers and polished marble, she felt painfully out of place. The chandeliers above glittered like stars mocking her, and the grand piano gleamed as if even the furniture didn't think she belonged there. Raymond's words still echoed in her mind. "If you can dance this waltz perfectly, I'll adopt you myself." She didn't know whether he meant it or if he was just trying to humiliate her, but she didn't care. For her, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about keeping her promise to dance through the pain. The pianist placed his fingers on the keys, and a soft hum filled the air. It was gentle at first, a delicate whisper of music that floated like a memory through the hall. Amara froze. That melody, it was the same one. The same rhythm her mother used to hum while they danced together. Her chest tightened, and her eyes welled with tears. For a brief moment, it felt as if her mother was right there, watching her, whispering, "Dance, my love. Don't stop." Her fingers trembled slightly, then steadied. The sound of the violin joined in, wrapping around her heart like a warm embrace. The hall faded away. The crowd, the chandeliers, even Raymond's piercing stare, all disappeared. All that remained was the music and her mother's memory. Raymond, though pretending not to care, found himself leaning forward slightly. There was something different about the way she stood, still and calm, but alive, like a candle refusing to go out. He had seen hundreds of dancers, all perfect, all polished, but never one who carried silence so powerfully. A small sigh escaped Amara's lips as she took a deep breath. The floor beneath her feet no longer felt cold. The fear that once gripped her melted into something else, freedom. In that moment, she understood why she had come all this way, why her heart had led her to this very hall. This wasn't about proving her worth to Raymond Carter. It was about proving to herself that her mother's waltz still lived within her, that no cruelty or hardship could steal that part of her away. The music swelled, rich and deep. Amara lifted her chin, her back straightened, and her small, bare feet shifted ever so slightly into position. Everyone in the hall went silent. Even the laughter that had once filled the corners of the room vanished. The pianist's hands moved faster, the melody growing stronger, fuller. And in that moment, just before her first movement, Amara smiled faintly, as though she could hear her mother's voice once more. "Go on, Amara, show them how love dances." The music carried her heart, and with the next breath, she stepped into the rhythm, the same waltz her mother had once held her to, and began to dance. The hall filled with the deep, graceful sound of violins. Every note shimmered through the air, echoing off the tall marble pillars and golden chandeliers. Raymond leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, an expression of faint amusement resting on his face. He had seen countless dancers crumble under the weight of that very melody. The Royal Waltz, a dance that demanded both precision and soul. Surely, this barefoot orphan would stumble before the second measure. But the moment Amara took her first step, everything changed. Her foot touched the floor like a whisper. There was no hesitation, no fear, only flow. Her movements were soft yet certain, as though she and the music had shared a secret long before this moment. The audience, who had been ready to laugh, found themselves holding their breath. Amara spun gently, the folds of her faded blue dress swirling around her like ocean waves. Every gesture carried meaning, her hands rising with grace, her body bending in rhythm to the violin's sorrowful cry. She didn't dance like someone trained to please. She danced like someone trying to speak without words. Raymond's eyes narrowed. There was something deeply unsettling about this child's dance. It wasn't perfect by his technical standards. Her posture wasn't academic, her form unpolished, but there was something far more powerful about her. She danced with truth. Her bare feet slid across the polished floor, leaving faint traces of movement that felt alive. Every turn, every step told a story. It was as if the music didn't lead her. She led the music. The melody followed her heartbeat, matching the rhythm of her soul. The crowd, once filled with murmurs and arrogance, began to soften. Even the most experienced dancers, who had practiced this waltz for years, couldn't look away. They saw something they had never been taught. Emotion so raw it reached beyond talent. Raymond's instructors, sitting beside him, leaned forward unconsciously. One whispered, "Sir, she's incredible." But Raymond didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on her, his mind unwilling to admit the truth. He had come expecting mockery and failure. Yet every passing moment drew him deeper into her performance. As the violins swelled, Amara moved faster. Her spins became like echoes of light. But it wasn't chaos. It was emotion released, her memories pouring out into each motion. When she leapt, it wasn't for applause. It was for her mother, for every lonely night she had danced to silence. The soft rhythm shifted, and Amara glided forward, her small hands reaching upward as if to embrace something unseen. For an instant, it felt as though she was dancing with someone invisible, someone only she could feel. And in that moment, every person in the hall saw it, the presence of her mother. The way she looked upward with tenderness, the faint smile on her face. It was love made visible. Tears shimmered in the eyes of several onlookers. Even the proudest parents, who had come to see their own children perform, found their hearts aching. The orphan girl with nothing was reminding them of everything they had forgotten, how to feel. Raymond shifted in his seat, his composed expression breaking for the first time. He felt a strange, warm ache in his chest, something that had been buried under years of arrogance and wealth. He tried to push it away, but her dance wouldn't let him. The little girl's every movement seemed to strip away the walls he had built around his heart. The music built toward its final crescendo. Amara turned once, twice, then slowed. Her arms rose like wings before gently folding over her chest. She closed her eyes as the final violin note trembled in the air and faded into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The grand hall, once full of noise, whispers, and pride, was now filled with only stillness. It was as if time itself paused to honor her. Then, the silence shattered. Applause erupted like thunder. The audience stood to their feet, clapping and cheering, some even wiping tears. The sound filled the room, echoing off every wall. Amara opened her eyes, startled. She had expected laughter, maybe pity, but not this. She took a small step back, her breathing heavy, her eyes wide in disbelief. Raymond remained seated for a few seconds longer, frozen. His fingers tightened around the edge of his chair. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew what he had just witnessed wasn't an accident. It wasn't luck. It was genius born from pain and love. Slowly, he stood. His face, usually cold and unreadable, softened. His eyes met Amara's. For the first time in years, he didn't see a student or a competitor. He saw a soul. The applause continued, roaring like a wave that refused to die. Some shouted her name. Others just clapped, unable to find words. Amara bowed her head slightly, unsure what to do. Her heart raced, her mind spinning. She had danced the way her mother had taught her, to heal, to remember, to love, and somehow it had touched everyone watching. Raymond exhaled slowly. Deep inside, something shifted, something he had long thought dead. As he looked at the little girl before him, trembling and shining under the golden lights, he realized the truth. For the first time in years, he had felt. And that feeling he couldn't ignore. Raymond walked toward her slowly, each step echoing through the vast hall. The usual arrogance in his expression was gone, replaced by a strange, unsteady fear. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor, but for once, he didn't feel the weight of his wealth or reputation. All he could see was the little girl who had just turned his world upside down. "Who taught you that dance?" he asked, his voice quieter than before, almost fragile. Amara, still catching her breath, looked down shyly. "My mother," she said softly. "She used to dance with me every night before she left." Something in her tone, gentle yet filled with loss, pierced through him like a blade. Raymond's confident posture stiffened. He stared at her, the name forming on his tongue before he could stop himself. "Your mother's name? What was it?" Amara hesitated for a moment, her small fingers brushing against the pendant around her neck. "Lydia," she said finally. "Lydia Morgan." The hall went still again. The crowd, still buzzing from her performance, quieted in confusion. They looked between the girl and the millionaire, sensing something was happening, something far more personal than an audition. Raymond's face turned pale. His lips parted, but no words came out. His hands trembled slightly. "That's impossible," he whispered. Lydia Morgan was. Amara's eyes lifted quickly, searching his face. "You knew her?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. Raymond turned away, pressing a hand against his chest, as if the air had been knocked out of him. "Knew her," he murmured bitterly. "She was the only woman I ever loved." The confession hung heavy in the air. He closed his eyes, memories flooding back, distant laughter in the rain, late-night dances under the moonlight, and the way Lydia's eyes sparkled every time he told her she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He continued, his voice trembling now. "But when I was young, my family refused to let me marry her. They said she wasn't one of us because she was black. I was weak back then. I thought I was protecting her by walking away, by choosing a life my parents wanted for me. But the truth is I destroyed both of us." Amara's heart pounded. Each word felt like it was tearing open an old wound she didn't even know existed. Raymond took a deep breath, his eyes misting. I searched for her years later. When I finally had enough courage to defy them, I tried to find her. But she was gone, disappeared. Every trail led to nothing. I thought she'd left the city. I thought she'd forgotten me. Amara's fingers trembled as she held up her small pendant, the one she had worn all her life. It was old, tarnished, and shaped like a shield with intricate carvings. My mother told me once, she said softly, that the man she loved gave her this and said it would always protect her. Raymond's eyes fell on it. At first, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then his breath hitched. His knees weakened. The emblem etched into the pendant, the elegant crest of intertwined initials, was one he knew too well. It was the Carter family crest, a custom-made heirloom he had commissioned when he was young, a promise symbol meant for Lydia. His throat tightened. Where did you get that? He whispered, though he already knew the answer. My mother wore it every day, Amara replied. When she got sick, she gave it to me. She said it belonged to my father. The color drained from Raymond's face completely. He took a trembling step closer, his voice breaking. Lydia had a child? His words cracked under the weight of disbelief. He stared into the girl's eyes that suddenly looked so familiar, eyes that held the same spark as Lydia's when she used to smile. A rush of emotion hit him, years of regret, guilt, and longing all at once. He covered his mouth, his breath unsteady, his heart pounding violently in his chest. Then, as if his body could no longer bear the truth, he fell to his knees before her. You're my daughter, he said, barely able to speak. Amara's lips parted, confusion and shock flashing across her face. The crowd behind her gasped in disbelief, but the world around her felt distant, muted, as if time itself had stopped. Raymond looked up at her, his eyes filled with tears. For the first time in his life, the great Raymond Carter looked small, fragile. All these years, he whispered, I've been searching for meaning, for something real, and it was you. All along, it was you. Amara took a hesitant step back. Her mind was spinning, her heart caught between disbelief and hope. You're saying you're my father? Raymond nodded slowly, tears falling freely now. I left your mother because I was afraid, but fate has punished me every day since. And now I see her again, in you. He reached out a trembling hand, but stopped midway, afraid she might pull away. Can you ever forgive me? He whispered. The hall was silent. The audience, who had come expecting a show, now witnessed something sacred. A reunion born from years of pain and fate's cruel mercy. And Amara stood there, her heart breaking and healing all at once, staring at the man who had once abandoned her mother and unknowingly left her behind too. Tears streamed down Raymond's face as he looked at Amara. For a man who had spent his life building empires, winning awards, and commanding respect, this was the first time he truly felt powerless. The great Raymond Carter, feared, admired, envied, was now just a broken father kneeling before the daughter he never knew existed. The grand hall that moments ago had echoed with applause was now drowned in silence. Every spectator stood frozen, captivated by the scene before them. It was no longer a dance competition or an audition. It had become something sacred, a reunion born from pain, loss, and fate. Amara's small hands trembled as she stared at him. Her voice came out in a shaky whisper. You mean you're my father? He nodded slowly, tears falling freely. His proud posture was gone. Guilt and love battled within him. I don't deserve to call myself that, he said, his voice breaking. I walked away from your mother when she needed me most. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was a coward. I let her suffer, and I let you grow up alone. If you can forgive me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. For a moment, Amara couldn't move. Memories of cold nights at the orphanage, the loneliness, the hunger, all of it flashed before her eyes. Every tear she had cried, every birthday spent staring at an empty wall, it all came rushing back. All of that pain had begun with one man's decision. Part of her wanted to turn away, but then she heard her mother's voice echo in her heart, as clearly as if she were standing beside her. Forgiveness is the final step in love, Amara. Don't let anger make your heart heavy. Her lips quivered, and before she could stop herself, she stepped forward. The hall seemed to hold its breath as she wrapped her small arms around Raymond. Gasps spread across the room. The mighty millionaire, the man who had once mocked her, now broke completely. He clutched her tightly, tears soaking into her hair. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, my little girl. I failed your mother. I won't fail you. From now on, you'll never dance alone again." The audience couldn't hold back their emotions. Many wiped their eyes, others simply bowed their heads. What they had just witnessed was not a performance. It was redemption. That night changed everything. News of the orphan girl who danced her way into her father's heart spread across the city like wildfire. Headlines called it the Waltz of Forgiveness. Some thought it was fiction, but those who had been there knew the truth. Raymond adopted Amara officially within a month. The papers captured the moment she walked out of the orphanage for the last time, holding his hand. She no longer wore a faded dress. She wore a bright white one, a symbol of a new beginning. Raymond didn't just give her a home. He gave her a legacy. Under his guidance, Amara trained in the academy, not as a student, but as its brightest star. Yet despite her growing fame, she never lost her humility. She danced not for applause, but for love, for the memory of her mother and the forgiveness that had healed two souls. Months later, she performed again in the same grand hall where it had all begun. This time, the stage lights shone brighter than ever. The crowd filled every seat, eager to witness the little girl whose story had touched millions. Raymond sat in the front row, tears already glistening in his eyes even before the music began. When the first note played, Amara closed her eyes and whispered, "For you, Mama." She moved with the same grace as before, but now her dance carried peace instead of pain. Every step spoke of healing, every turn of gratitude. The waltz that had once been used to humiliate her now belonged to her. It was her mother's love reborn through her movements. When the performance ended, the hall rose as one in thunderous applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, some crying openly. Raymond was the first to reach the stage, his heart bursting with pride. He wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "Your mother would be proud." From that night onward, Amara became the youngest performer ever to headline at the Carter Academy. But more than that, she became its symbol, the girl who turned pain into art and hate into love. Her story inspired countless others across the world. And every time she danced, before her final spin, she'd lift her face toward the heavens and whisper the same words that carried her through every storm. "For you, Mama," because deep down, she knew that somewhere her mother was watching, not from a distance, but through every note, every heartbeat, and every waltz that turned a broken past into something beautifully whole again. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.